This is the handsomest nerd this side of the Mississippi here with T&J Games going over some pre-release tech for M15. This last pre-release, I decided to go with the Hunt with Ambition, the black version. And the reason I went with that is because of Indulgent Tormentor. 5/3 flyer for 5 mana, pretty solid. And then this ability here on your upkeep that you either get a draw card or they, to counter at, can give you, they either sack a creature or they pay 3 life. Pretty decent, and I liked it a lot just because it's got evasion with the flying, and it's it's the lowest cost, but it can still, end the game pretty quickly. All right, let's start here at the lowest end of my mana base. The 1-drops, typically I won't run a 1-drop unless it is really cost effective. Like Hot Soup, that was probably one of my better cards that I ran because it gives an unblockable. So anytime in limited you have unblockable, that's probably the best ability, and you can really race people that way. With Crippling Blight, -1/-1, so you'll kill their smaller creatures, and you can still drop it on a big creature, so it can't block and you can get in there. Oppressive Raise, real good to lock down creatures early game. They can't attack or block, so that slows them down, and their activated abilities can't be used. So it's basically the second best thing to put on a Leonor Elf or whatever. Elvish Mystic. The next, Typhoid Rats, 1/1 Death Touch, so it trades up with absolutely everything. So it can keep their biggest threat in check until they have an answer for it. So it's really good at that. My 2-drop slot, I have a lot of really cost-efficient creatures. We'll start with the Orozco Swiftclaw. 3/1 for 2. So it can trade up. It also trades down. But if you can curve out with it well and they don't have an answer, you can really start racing them quickly. Child of the Night, 2/1 lifelink, just fantastic because when you hit them with it, it's basically a 4-point life swing. You lose, or you gain 2 and they lose 2. So that can really even out the odds. Sign in Blood, great card draw because black and white with card draw is just really nice where it just keeps your threats flowing. And the 2 loss of life is really negligible. The tougher part about it is actually the mana cost and the life loss. Johnny's Pridemate, with so much life gain I have in here, it can really turn into a really nasty threat. For the 3 slots, Devouring Light, since there's so few creature removal, so much creature removal in this, it's really quite good for even just average creature removal because it not only exiles them, attacking or blocking, which is nice, because typically you'll find where it only removes attackers or blockers, but it exiles them, and it has the Convoke, so you can really sneak it in there if you have any white creatures, so I did that once or twice. Wall of Limbs, it's okay, it was it was like 22, 23 picks. Because it works, it has some synergy with the life gain, I figured it'd be good in there. It's like 22nd, 23rd pick for my creatures. Necrogen Scudder, though, this guy is an all-star. 3/3 flyer for 3 is great. You do lose 3 life when it comes into play, but I don't think that's as bad as the threat you have just flying in the air for 3 every turn. For my 4 slot, Marked by Honor, pretty solid. I liked it a lot with the Hot Soup, it was real good, or any the other flyers I have. Child of Night is real good, just because it bumps its defense up. The Vigilance is real nice on it, so it's a decent creature enchantment. It came in kind of low as a filler. Juggernaut, 4-drop 5/3 is pretty solid. the can't be blocked by walls is actually relevant because there are a few walls, and I did have my opponent in one game try to block with a wall of essence, but they not an option, so he did take 5 for it. Um, Now my bombs here are real nice. Well, before that actually, flesh to dust. Another one of the few creature removals in this format. Now my bombs were pretty impressive. At first I had Avacyn. I was able to get the 3 white for it because my mana base over here. So it's an incredible beater because again there's so few creature removal. You can just get in there and then you can leave back blockers like little guys to really hinder them from being able to race you well. It worked really well with Typhoid Rats, where I could just sit there with the Typhoid Rats 2 mana open and be able to take down their biggest threat. And again, the Indulgent Tormentor was really nice. And then, of course, Obnixilis is just a powerhouse. 4/4 flyer for 6, yeah, but the biggest part, the top, I mean, they're not going to be doing so much searching of their library, so that's negligible in this format. But it getting bigger every time a creature dies, it gets real huge. I think the biggest I got it up to was like a 9 or a 10, and that's just one-shotting people at that point. I talked earlier about the Avacyn, being able to get that, and the real reason I was able to play it is because I got 2 Caves of Koilos, and that really opened up my mana base to being able to use a lot of spells here that had multiple colors in their cost, and like my higher end, the Devouring Light to a secondary, but the Avacyn and the last top 3 beaters that I have here really helped with that. And Evolving Wilds is always good. What I want to talk about now is basically my mana curve itself. When I'm building a deck, I typically set it up in this format where I have everything set up based on converted mana cost. And when you look at it like this, you should have a typical bell curve where it basically has a higher point and then it goes back down. Mine's peaks early in the 2 slot. Typically you want it to peak around the 3 slot. But because I was 2, I was far more aggressive. And because of that, you just have to play a little bit more aggressive. If it's at 3, that's typically where you want to be, because then you still have all your power, because typically the 1 and 2s aren't as powerful as your 3s and 4s converted mana cost. I was very conservative in my lands. I only went with 17. I probably could have got away with 16, but I like going on the higher end just to ensure that I get everything out. I don't think I ran into too many times where I was mana screwed to where I couldn't cast everything. Even with Avacyn, I think there was only one time that I had trouble casting her. With my alternates or sideboard options, I did have a few more. I had 2 extra Child of Nights that I could have run. I thought that was a little greedy and I didn't really need them because my 2 drops were already so good and I didn't want to devote more slots to 2. Same with the Soul Mender. It seemed to be okay, but it really just delayed games more than actually gave you the win. Pillar of Light, pretty good. Especially against the higher end creatures that basically everybody gets with their pool. Solemn Offering. Okay, there's not too many artifacts or enchantments, but it's nice to have some options for removing them. And in Garrick's Wake, really kind of a desperation just because it costs 9 and there's not too much ramp with this. So that's pretty much what I brought in. I did actually end up bringing in the Garrick's Wake. That was just because my opponent had Garrick and I needed some answer for it. And that was basically my sideboard and alternates. I did manage to hit top 16 in the pre-release. I missed top 8 by one place, which is bittersweet. But I did end up getting this pretty decent play mat. I believe it is unique artwork to them because it does look like one of the gods, but I don't believe it is. I've never seen this artwork anywhere else, so it might be new, it might be relevant, but it was held in Omaha, Nebraska at the Legends Comics and Coffee Shop. It was a pretty decent venue. Went to midnight release, so that's kind of the tougher one where you're not only fighting your opponents but also fatigue if you haven't prepared for sleep. So that you got to think about that when you're playing because that can really cause major mistakes. Speaking of I will not say this in one of the later rounds, just the fatigue issue where my opponent had me dead on board twice and he didn't take advantage of it. And because of that, I actually won the game. So much so that he had an answer to kill me in his hand before he shook my hand, and I'm glad to take that win. So that's always proof never to scoop your cards until it's finally over. So, well, thanks for tuning in to this little pre-release. Make sure and visit the other things available on T&J Games, and have a good one.